In the early years of the 20th century, when Paris was still lit by gas lamps and the sound of horse-drawn carriages echoed through cobblestone streets, a child was born who would one day transform the way we think about freedom, identity, and what it means to become oneself. Her name was Simone Lucie Ernestine Marie Bertrand de Beauvoir, and she entered the world on January 9th, 1908, in a comfortable apartment on the Boulevard du Montparnasse. Let us settle into this story now, breathing slowly, allowing ourselves to drift back through the layers of time to that Belle Epoque world of lace curtains and leather-bound books, of strict propriety and simmering questions. Simone's family belonged to the Parisian bourgeoisie, that respectable class of lawyers, civil servants, and educated professionals who valued appearances, manners, and tradition above all else. Her father, Georges de Beauvoir, was a legal secretary with aristocratic pretensions, a man who loved the theater and could recite lengthy passages of classic literature by heart. Her mother, Françoise Brasseur, came from a wealthy banking family and had been raised in the strict Catholic piety that she would attempt to pass on to her daughters. Simone was the elder of two girls. Her sister Helene, called Poupette, would arrive 2 years later, and the bond between these sisters would become one of the most enduring relationships of Simone's life. Breathe in the atmosphere of that Parisian childhood now. The scent of beeswax polish on wooden furniture, the rustle of taffeta and silk, the weight of expectation that hung in the air like morning mist over the Seine. Young Simone was a serious, intense child with dark hair and searching eyes that seemed always to be observing, questioning, measuring the world around her. From her earliest years, she exhibited a hunger for knowledge that would never be satisfied, a restless intellectual curiosity that set her apart. In the nursery she shared with Poupette, surrounded by dolls and toys deemed appropriate for young ladies, Simone preferred instead to lose herself in books. Reading became her refuge, her window into worlds beyond the confined expectations of her class and gender. She devoured fairy tales and adventure stories, the lives of saints and heroes, anything that suggested there were ways of being beyond the narrow path laid out before her. Her parents encouraged this love of learning, proud of their precocious daughter, though they never imagined where it might lead. Her father delighted in her quick mind, calling her his brilliant one, even as he assumed she would eventually settle into the role prescribed for women of her station: a good marriage, a well-managed home, children to raise in the proper fashion. Her mother ensured that Simone's religious education was thorough and devout. The young girl was enrolled in a private Catholic institute, the Cours Désir, where the daughters of good families received instruction in the faith alongside their lessons in literature, history, and languages. And for a time, Simone embraced this religious world with characteristic intensity. She prayed fervently, attended Mass with genuine devotion, and even imagined herself becoming a nun, dedicating her life entirely to God. Let us rest here for a moment in this image of the young believer, kneeling in prayer in the dim light of a chapel, candles flickering, the murmur of Latin prayers washing over her like water, not yet knowing that this faith would eventually fall away, leaving her to construct meaning in a world without divine guarantees. But even in these early years, before the crisis of faith that would come in adolescence, there were signs of the independent spirit that would define Simone's life. She bridled against the restrictions placed on girls, noticing with sharp clarity that her male cousins enjoyed freedoms denied to her and her sister. Boys could roam, explore, make noise and messes. Girls must be quiet, obedient, clean, contained. Boys would grow up to have professions, adventures, lives of their own making. Girls were expected to become extensions of their husbands, their identities absorbed into another's. Something in young Simone resisted this fate, though she could not yet articulate her resistance in words. She would find those words later, would develop the philosophical framework to explain how women are made, not born, how gender is a social construction that limits human freedom. But first, she simply felt the constraint, the way a bird might sense the bars of a cage even before attempting to fly. The years of childhood passed in a rhythm of lessons and family gatherings, summers spent in the countryside at her grandfather's estate in Mérignac, winters in the increasingly shabby apartment in Paris. For the family's fortunes were declining. The First World War had disrupted the economic order, and the Brasseur banking wealth that had cushioned the family was gradually disappearing. Georges de Beauvoir's pretensions to aristocratic leisure became harder to maintain as money grew tighter. The apartment that had once seemed elegant began to feel cramped and shabby. Françoise economized, made do, and worried constantly about keeping up appearances. And Simone watched all of this with her observant eyes, beginning to understand the fragility of social position, the way that class and money shaped lives and possibilities. Adolescence arrived, bringing with it the profound intellectual and spiritual crisis that would reshape Simone's world entirely. She was 14 when she lost her faith, not gradually but suddenly, the entire structure of religious belief collapsing like a house of cards. The story she would later tell was matter of fact. One day she simply realized she no longer believed in God, that the prayers and rituals that had once filled her with meaning now felt hollow, empty of truth. But this loss was not experienced as liberation, not at first. Instead, it brought anguish, a vertigo of meaninglessness. If there was no God, no divine plan, no heavenly Father watching over creation, then what was the point of anything? Where did value come from? How should one live? These questions would occupy Simone for the rest of her life, would become the very foundation of her existentialist philosophy. But at 14, she simply felt unmoored, adrift in a suddenly indifferent universe. She could not share this crisis with her mother, whose simple piety would have been wounded and uncomprehending. She could not fully share it with her father, despite their intellectual rapport, for he expected certain performances of respectability. And so she carried her doubt and questioning privately, even as she continued to attend Mass and go through the motions of faith. In this period of turmoil, books became more important than ever. Simone read voraciously, seeking in literature and philosophy the guidance she could no longer find in religion. She discovered the great French novels, the works of Gide and Alain Fournier, books that portrayed individuals struggling to create their own values, to forge authentic lives in the absence of absolute truths. She began to form a picture of the life she wanted, not marriage and domesticity, but independence, intellectual work, the freedom to think and write and become fully herself. By the time Simone reached her late teenage years, her determination had crystallized into a clear resolve. She would become a philosopher. She would pursue the life of the mind with complete dedication, would seek truth and meaning through rigorous intellectual work. This decision was radical for a young woman of her time and class. Philosophy was a male domain, the university a masculine space. Women of good families did not become professors or scholars. They became wives and mothers, or perhaps teachers of young children if they needed to earn money before marriage. But Simone had found in herself a calling, a vocation that would not be denied. Her parents, facing financial pressures, had gradually come to accept that their brilliant elder daughter would need to support herself. And so they agreed, perhaps not fully understanding what they were agreeing to, that Simone could prepare for the agrégation, the demanding competitive examination that would qualify her to teach philosophy at the highest levels of the French educational system. Let us rest now in this moment of determination, this threshold between childhood and the life to come. See Simone at her desk, bent over her books in the lamplight, her mind alive with questions about freedom and ethics, existence and essence, the nature of consciousness and the possibility of authentic choice. The apartment is quiet now, her family asleep. Outside, Paris stretches into the darkness, a city of lights and shadows, of old traditions and new possibilities. Simone does not yet know about the partner she will meet, the unconventional life she will create, the books she will write that will change how generations think about what it means to be human, to be free, to be a woman. She knows only that she must think, must question, must seek her own path. And in this determination, in this commitment to becoming herself, the philosopher is already being born. Rest now in this image of possibility, breathing slowly, feeling the calm certainty of a life finding its direction, as we prepare to follow Simone forward into the intellectual adventures that await. And so we follow Simone forward, into the halls of higher learning, into the world of serious philosophical study that she had longed for throughout her youth. The year is 1926, and she enters the Sorbonne, that great temple of French intellectual life, carrying with her that fierce determination we have witnessed taking root in her heart. Feel yourself moving gently through these spaces with her, observing the quiet reverence of libraries, the earnest discussions in corridors where young minds gather to debate the great questions of existence. Here, surrounded by books that reach toward vaulted ceilings, by professors who speak of Descartes and Kant, by fellow students who share her hunger for understanding, Simone begins the rigorous training that will shape her philosophical voice. She studies mathematics, literature, and philosophy, her mind expanding with each new system of thought she encounters. Breathe slowly as we settle into the rhythm of her student days, the hours spent reading phenomenology and ethics, the careful note-taking, the moments of sudden insight when a difficult concept finally becomes clear. There is something deeply peaceful in this image of dedicated study, in the quiet pursuit of wisdom. Simone distinguishes herself quickly among her peers. Her professors recognize the exceptional quality of her mind, the precision of her arguments, the depth of her engagement with philosophical problems. She writes essays on Leibniz and Descartes. She grapples with questions about consciousness and perception. She learns the careful methodologies of philosophical analysis. And yet, even as she masters these traditional approaches, something within her resists the purely abstract, the purely theoretical. She wants philosophy to speak to lived experience, to the actual texture of human existence, to freedom, to choice, to the ambiguity and uncertainty that color our days. Rest here in this tension, this productive friction between systematic thought and lived reality, for it is in this space that her unique philosophical voice will emerge. The lecture halls are quiet now in your mind's eye, the afternoon light slanting through tall windows, dust motes drifting peacefully through beams of golden illumination. Simone sits with an open book, her concentration absolute, and in this moment of studious absorption, time seems to slow and soften. Let your breathing deepen as we remain here a while longer in this sanctuary of learning, feeling the calm purposefulness of intellectual work, the gentle satisfaction of understanding gradually unfolding. The Sorbonne represents not just education but transformation. Each book read, each lecture attended, each conversation with fellow students adds another layer to the philosopher she is becoming. And she is becoming, constantly becoming, never fixed or finished, but always in the process of creating herself through her choices, through her commitments, through her engagement with ideas and with the world. This will be one of her central insights, that we are not born complete, but must continually make ourselves through the freedom we exercise in each moment. Feel this insight settling gently into your awareness like snow falling on quiet fields. We are always in the process of becoming, and there is something profoundly peaceful in recognizing that we need not be finished, need not have all the answers, but can embrace the ongoing project of creating ourselves with intention and authenticity. As Simone progresses through her studies, she moves deeper into the philosophical landscape that will define her life's work. In 1928, she enters the École Normale Supérieure to prepare for the agrégation, the prestigious competitive examination that will qualify her to teach philosophy. This is a time of intensive study, of total immersion in philosophical texts and problems. Imagine with me the quiet intensity of this period, the early mornings beginning with coffee and reading, the long days of study punctuated by discussions with other brilliant young minds, the evenings spent writing and thinking, turning ideas over and over until they reveal new facets. There is a rhythm here, a pattern to the days that becomes almost meditative in its consistency. Simone reads Spinoza and discovers his vision of freedom as understanding necessity. She studies Hegel and encounters the dialectic, the constant movement of thesis and antithesis towards synthesis. She engages with the phenomenology of Husserl, learning to examine consciousness itself as a philosophical subject. Each of these thinkers contributes something to her developing philosophical framework, and yet she is not content simply to absorb their ideas. She questions, she challenges, she seeks to forge her own path through these inherited traditions. Breathe gently as we observe her in this process of intellectual synthesis, bringing together disparate strands of thought into something distinctively her own. The examination she prepares for is notoriously difficult. Only a handful of candidates pass each year, and the competition is fierce. But Simone approaches this challenge with characteristic determination, studying from dawn until late into the night, fortifying her mind with the great texts of Western philosophy. And here, in this crucible of preparation, she encounters someone who will change the course of her life. His name is Jean-Paul Sartre, a fellow philosophy student with wild hair, crossed eyes, and a mind of astonishing brilliance and originality. Feel the significance of this meeting settling over the scene like evening settling over a landscape. When they first study together, preparing for the examination alongside a small group of peers, something extraordinary happens. They recognize in each other intellectual equals, philosophical souls who speak the same language of ideas and who share a passion for understanding human existence. Their conversations range across vast territories of thought. They discuss freedom and determinism, the nature of consciousness, the possibility of authentic existence in a world without God or predetermined meaning. They talk for hours, days, months, their dialogue becoming a kind of collaborative philosophy, each challenging and inspiring the other to think more deeply, more radically, more honestly. Let yourself drift peacefully through these conversations, hearing the cadence of philosophical debate like distant music, feeling the excitement of ideas meeting and intertwining. Sartre is developing what will become existentialism, a philosophy centered on human freedom, on the idea that existence precedes essence, that we are not born with a fixed nature but must create ourselves through our choices. Simone engages with these ideas passionately, contributing her own insights, pushing back against certain formulations, adding dimensions that Sartre himself has not fully considered. This is not a relationship of teacher and student, but of co-thinkers, of partners in philosophical exploration. In 1929, they take the aggregation examination together. Sartre places first. Simone places second, a remarkable achievement, especially for a woman in an educational system still dominated by men. Some of the examiners actually believed she should have placed first, recognizing the exceptional quality of her work. But the ranking matters less than what it represents. Simone is now a qualified philosopher, credentialed and recognized, ready to teach and to write, ready to enter the philosophical arena as a thinker in her own right. Rest in this moment of achievement, feeling the quiet satisfaction of goals reached through discipline and dedication. And rest, too, in the knowledge of the partnership that has formed Simone and Sartre, beginning a relationship that will last for decades. Unconventional and controversial, but rooted in intellectual companionship and mutual respect. Let this image comfort you. Two minds meeting in genuine understanding, two people committed to freedom and to supporting each other's philosophical work. There is something deeply peaceful in the idea of such companionship, such meeting of minds and hearts. Now let us settle more deeply into the philosophical ideas that are taking shape in Simone's mind during these formative years. For understanding these concepts, freedom, ambiguity, responsibility, is like understanding the architecture of her inner world. Breathe slowly and allow these ideas to wash over you gently, not as abstract formulations, but as insights into the human condition, into the very texture of what it means to be alive and conscious. First, there is freedom. Not the simple freedom to do whatever one wishes, but the more profound and sometimes troubling freedom that comes from recognizing that we are not determined by our biology, our history, or any external force. We are, in the existentialist view that Simone is helping to articulate, radically free to choose who we will become. There is no script written for us, no predetermined path, no essential nature that dictates our choices. This freedom can feel vertiginous, even frightening. It places the weight of our lives squarely on our own shoulders. But it is also exhilarating, for it means we are the authors of our own existence, that each day we write another page in the story of who we are becoming. Let this insight rest gently in your awareness. You are free, more free than you perhaps realize, to shape your life according to your own values and commitments. Feel the relief in this recognition, the opening of possibility. And yet Simone recognizes something that makes her philosophy distinctive: ambiguity. Unlike some existentialists who speak of radical freedom as if it were absolute and uncomplicated, Simone sees that our freedom is always situated, always exercised within constraints, always marked by uncertainty. We are both free and conditioned, both autonomous agents and products of our circumstances, both subject and object, consciousness and flesh. We cannot escape this ambiguity. It is the fundamental condition of human existence. And instead of seeking some resolution, some way to eliminate this tension, Simone suggests that we must learn to embrace it, to live authentically within the ambiguous space between pure freedom and complete determination. There is something deeply soothing in this acceptance of ambiguity, this permission not to have everything resolved and clear, but to dwell peacefully in the uncertain spaces of life. Breathe into this acceptance, letting go of the need for absolute certainty, resting instead in the fluid, ambiguous nature of existence. And with freedom comes responsibility. This is the third pillar of Simone's emerging philosophy. If we are truly free to choose our actions, our values, our commitments, then we are responsible for what we make of our lives. We cannot blame fate or nature or God for who we become. We must own our choices and their consequences. This responsibility extends beyond ourselves, because our choices affect others, because we are always acting in a shared world. We have an ethical obligation to choose in ways that promote the freedom of others as well. Simone will spend much of her career exploring what this means, what it means to act responsibly in a world without predetermined moral rules, what it means to respect others' freedom while exercising our own, what it means to live ethically in the face of ambiguity and uncertainty. Let these concepts, freedom, ambiguity, responsibility, settle like gentle layers of understanding, each one enriching your sense of what it means to be human, to be alive, to be engaged in the ongoing project of creating yourself. And finally, there is this beautiful phrase that captures so much of Simone's philosophy: the project of becoming oneself. We are not born complete. We are not fixed and finished. Instead, we are always in process, always becoming, always engaged in the project of making ourselves through our choices and commitments. This is not a burden, but a gift. The gift of never being stuck, never being trapped by past mistakes or past identities, but always having the freedom to choose again, to become anew. Rest now in this comforting thought. You are always becoming, always in the process of creating yourself, and tomorrow you can choose again, can move in new directions, can continue the beautiful, endless project of becoming who you wish to be. Feel yourself relaxing into this flow, this constant becoming, like a river that is always moving, always changing, always itself, and always new. Simone and Sartre, having passed their examinations and earned their credentials, now make a series of choices that will shape the unconventional life they will share. They decide to formalize their relationship, but not in the traditional way. They reject marriage, that institution which Simone sees as often trapping women in predetermined roles, limiting their freedom to become themselves. Instead, they create what they call a pact, a commitment to each other that is freely chosen and continuously renewed, not imposed by law or social convention. It is a 2-year renewable contract of companionship, intellectual partnership, and affection. There is something beautifully radical in this arrangement, this insistence on choosing each moment rather than accepting inherited forms. They agree to be transparent with each other, to maintain what they call an essential love while allowing for contingent loves, other relationships that might arise in their lives. This arrangement will prove complicated and painful at times, but it emerges from their commitment to freedom, to living according to their own values rather than society's expectations. Breathe gently as we observe this choice, not judging, but simply witnessing two young philosophers trying to live according to their principles, trying to create forms of relationship that honor freedom and authenticity. They also make choices about their careers. Both accept teaching positions in provincial towns, Simone in Marseille, Sartre in Le Havre, beginning their work as philosophy teachers while continuing to read, think, and write. These early teaching years are significant. They bring Simone into contact with young students whose lives and questions will deepen her understanding of human experience. She teaches with passion and commitment, introducing her students to the great philosophical questions, encouraging them to think for themselves, to question received wisdom, to embrace the difficult freedom of choosing their own paths. Imagine the classroom. The afternoon light falling across desks, Simone at the front explaining Kant's categorical imperative or Hegel's phenomenology of spirit. The students leaning forward, engaged, occasionally challenged to the point of discomfort by ideas that shake their assumptions about the world. There is something peaceful in this image of teaching, this passing on of wisdom and method, this nurturing of young minds learning to think philosophically. And in the evenings, alone in her small apartment, Simone begins to write. She has always known that philosophy need not be confined to academic treatises and formal arguments. It can also be explored through fiction, through essays, through memoirs that blend philosophical reflection with lived experience. She begins working on novels, trying to capture in narrative form the philosophical insights that occupy her mind. How freedom feels in the moment of choice, how we deceive ourselves to escape responsibility, how we struggle toward authenticity in a world that constantly tempts us toward conformity and bad faith. The writing is difficult at first. She struggles to find her voice, to integrate philosophical depth with literary artistry. But she persists, for writing is itself a way of becoming, a way of creating meaning, a way of exercising her freedom to contribute something new to the world. Let yourself rest in this image of Simone writing late into the evening, the scratch of pen on paper, the words slowly accumulating into sentences and paragraphs, thoughts taking shape as language, consciousness examining itself through the act of composition. Meanwhile, she and Sartre correspond when they are separated by their teaching positions, their letters filled with philosophical discussions, personal reflections, and observations about the life around them. These letters are themselves a form of philosophical dialogue, each challenging and inspiring the other, each contributing to the development of existentialist thought. They visit each other when they can, spending long hours in cafes discussing their reading and their writing, their students and their ideas. Their partnership is entering its mature phase, not without tensions and complications, but sustained by genuine intellectual companionship and by their shared commitment to living freely and authentically. Rest now in the rhythm of these years. The teaching, the writing, the conversations, the constant engagement with ideas and with life. There is a purposefulness here, a sense of vocation being fulfilled, of talents being used in service of understanding and illumination. Let this purposefulness soothe you, reminding you of the deep satisfaction that comes from engaging fully with work that matters to you, from pursuing your own becoming with dedication and care. As we come to the close of this act, let us rest in the full picture of Simone as she completes this formative period of her life. The philosopher now fully educated, credentialed, beginning to teach and to write, committed to living according to her principles of freedom and authenticity. She is in her 20s, teaching in provincial France, writing in the evenings, traveling to Paris when she can to meet with Sartre and other friends from her student days. She reads voraciously, not just philosophy now, but literature from around the world, political theory, psychology, anything that might illuminate some aspect of human experience. She walks in the countryside near Marseille, observing the Mediterranean landscape, the cypress trees and rocky shores, the quality of light that has inspired so many artists and thinkers. She sits in cafes with her students, discussing their lives and concerns, learning from them, even as she teaches them. And slowly, steadily, the philosopher we will come to know is emerging, shaped by rigorous education, by her partnership with Sartre, by her commitment to living freely, and by her constant reflection on the meaning and texture of human existence. Breathe deeply and slowly now, letting the pace of this narration slow to match your drowsy state, feeling yourself drifting peacefully as we linger over these final images of Simone's formation. She is becoming herself, continually becoming through every choice and every commitment. And in this becoming, she is discovering the core insights that will guide her life's work, that we are radically free yet situated in ambiguous circumstances, that we are responsible for what we make of this freedom, that authentic existence requires us to face uncertainty and to choose courageously anyway, that we are never finished but always in process, always engaged in the project of creating ourselves anew. Let these insights drift through your consciousness like clouds drifting across a peaceful sky, not demanding attention or analysis, but simply present, simply there, gently shaping your understanding. The philosopher is ready now, ready to face the world, ready to engage with the great questions of ethics and politics, ready to write the books that will influence generations of thinkers and activists, ready to live a life that embodies her philosophical commitments. And we are ready now to follow her forward, but not quite yet. First, we will rest here a while longer, in this moment of quiet readiness, in this pause between formation and action, between becoming and being. Feel yourself settling more deeply into comfort, your breathing slow and regular, your body heavy and relaxed, your mind drifting peacefully among these gentle thoughts of freedom and becoming. Simone sits in her apartment, a book open on her lap, the evening light fading to dusk, and in this quiet moment, she is simply present, simply herself, simply breathing and being, even as she is always becoming. And you too can rest in this paradox, this beautiful ambiguity. You are who you are in this moment, and yet you are also always becoming, always growing, always moving forward into new possibilities. There is no rush, no urgency. The becoming happens naturally, inevitably, as you continue to choose and to live and to breathe. Rest now in this gentle certainty, this calm acceptance of the ongoing project of your own existence. Let Simone's example soothe you, her dedication to learning, her courage to live unconventionally, her insistence on freedom and authenticity, her recognition that we are always in process, always becoming. These ideas will be here when you wake, but for now, they simply accompany you into deeper rest, into peaceful sleep, into the quiet darkness where the day's thoughts dissolve and the mind renews itself. Breathe slowly, slowly, feeling yourself drifting, feeling the weight of your body fully supported, feeling the calm certainty that tomorrow offers new choices, new possibilities, new moments of becoming. The philosopher rests, and you rest, and in this shared rest there is profound peace, profound acceptance, profound release into the gentle flow of existence itself. And from this place of rest, from this quiet acceptance of the philosophy of becoming, we watch as Simone de Beauvoir awakens each morning in Paris, not to follow a path laid out by tradition, but to create her life anew, day by day, choice by choice. The year is 1931, and she has passed the agrégation examination in philosophy, placing second in all of France. And just behind her, in conversation that would last for decades, walks Jean-Paul Sartre, who placed first. They meet in the Luxembourg Gardens, in left-bank cafes where the air is thick with cigarette smoke and philosophical debate, and together they forge something unprecedented. A relationship based not on possession or convention, but on freedom and transparency. They call it a necessary love, essential but not exclusive, and they promise each other 2 years of closeness, followed by a lifetime of honesty and mutual independence. Breathe in this vision of relationship reimagined. Breathe out the old scripts of romance and ownership. Feel yourself settling deeper into comfort as we witness Simone choosing to live outside the traditional expectations for women of her class and time. She does not marry. She does not have children. She does not seek security in the conventional sense. Instead, she chooses the precarious freedom of the writer, the philosopher, the intellectual who will support herself through her words and her teaching. In the mornings, she works in cafes, the Dôme, the Rotonde, the Domago, her notebook open before her, her coffee growing cold as she writes. The gentle scratch of pen on paper becomes a rhythm, a meditation, a practice of freedom. She writes novels, pouring her philosophical ideas into fictional lives, exploring consciousness and choice through characters who struggle with authenticity and self-deception. Her first novel explores the interior life of a woman trapped by circumstance, yearning for freedom. And in writing these stories, Simone is not merely telling tales. She is working through the very questions that will define her philosophy. How do we become ourselves? How do we choose freely in a world that constrains us? What does it mean to be responsible for the life we create? Let these questions float through your awareness without demanding answers, gentle as clouds drifting across an evening sky. Feel the weight of your body sinking deeper into rest as we watch Simone walking the Paris streets, teaching philosophy to young women at a lycée, discussing Leibniz and Descartes in classrooms where chalk dust catches the afternoon light. She is creating her life deliberately, thoughtfully, with the full awareness that each choice shapes who she is becoming. There is something deeply restful in this vision of conscious living, of a life examined and chosen rather than merely inherited. Your breath slows, your muscles soften, and in this softening there is an echo of Simone's own philosophy, that we are not fixed things but ongoing processes, not static beings but continuous becomings. Rest in this thought. Rest in the image of the young philosopher finding her way, writing her truth, living her freedom in a world that did not expect such choices from a woman. The cafe lights glow warmly in the Parisian dusk, and you drift deeper into calm, deeper into peace, as Simone's pen moves across the page, creating worlds, creating meaning, creating herself. The rhythm of Simone's days takes on a pattern, a gentle structure built around freedom and discipline in equal measure. Each morning she writes, and in this daily practice there is both rigor and release. The rigor of showing up to the blank page, the release of allowing thoughts to flow into words, ideas into sentences, philosophy into life. Breathe with the rhythm of this creative practice, feeling how repetition can itself become a form of meditation, a way of being present to the moment while creating something that extends beyond the moment. Through the 1930s, Simone travels to Spain, to Greece, to Morocco, sometimes with Sartre, sometimes alone, always with the keen observer's eye that will fill her memoirs with vivid detail. She believes in experience as essential to understanding and living fully as a prerequisite to thinking deeply. And so she hikes mountain trails, explores ancient ruins, sits in foreign cafes, watching unfamiliar faces, absorbing the texture of different lives, different ways of being in the world. Let yourself rest in this vision of a life richly lived, of travel not as escape but as education, as expansion of perspective. Your body grows heavier, more relaxed as we watch Simone returning to Paris each autumn, resuming her teaching, her writing, her long conversations with Sartre, and the growing circle of intellectuals who gather around them. They are developing what will come to be called existentialism, though the name does not yet exist. This philosophy of freedom and responsibility, of existence preceding essence, of human beings as self-creating projects without predetermined nature. But these are not merely abstract ideas debated in comfortable rooms. Feel yourself sinking deeper as we recognize how Simone lives these principles daily, hourly, in every choice she makes. She pursues what she calls contingent loves alongside her necessary love with Sartre, relationships with women and men that honor desire and connection without possessiveness, that acknowledge the freedom and separateness of the other. This is not easy. There are jealousies, complications, pain, but there is also an insistence on honesty, on transparency, on treating other people as free subjects rather than as objects to be possessed. Breathe in this vision of ethical complexity, breathe out any judgment. The philosophy she is developing recognizes that freedom is not simple, that living authentically requires constant attention and effort, that we are always in danger of falling into what she and Sartre call bad faith, self-deception, the pretense that we are not free, the comfortable lie that our choices are determined by circumstances beyond our control. Your eyelids grow heavier as we watch the years unfold. As Simone publishes her first novel in 1943, during the dark years of German occupation, and begins work on her philosophical treatise. She writes of ethics, of ambiguity, of how we navigate moral questions in a world without God, without absolute values, without the comfort of predetermined right and wrong. And in the background of these philosophical explorations, the world itself is demonstrating the stakes of such questions. History is not abstract for Simone. Philosophy is not a game. Rest now in the awareness that thinking deeply about freedom matters, that examining how we live matters, that the questions Simone asks are questions about the very texture of human existence. The night deepens around you, peaceful and complete, as the philosopher works at her table, as her pen moves steadily across the page, as the ideas that will change the world take shape in notebooks and manuscripts, one careful word at a time. And then the world itself erupts into crisis, into war, into the terrible demonstration of what happens when freedom is crushed beneath ideology and violence. The year is 1940 and German forces enter Paris. Simone watches her city change, watches the cafes empty of familiar faces as friends flee or disappear, watches the green-gray uniforms fill the streets she has walked in freedom. Feel yourself breathing slowly, steadily, as we acknowledge this darkness without being consumed by it, as we witness how even in the deepest night, the human spirit continues to question, to resist, to insist on dignity and choice. Simone does not flee Paris. She remains, teaching when she can, writing always, navigating the dangers and deprivations of occupation with the same careful attention to ethics and authenticity that marks all her choices. There is less food. The cold penetrates deeper in winters without adequate fuel. Friends disappear into camps or hiding, or the machinery of resistance. And through it all, Simone continues to think, to write, to work on the philosophical questions that now take on urgent practical meaning. What does freedom mean under occupation? What does responsibility require when the world has gone mad? How do we remain authentic when survival itself may demand compromise? Let these questions drift through your mind without strain, without tension, recognizing that Simone faced them in lived experience, not merely an abstract thought. Your breath grows slower, deeper, as we watch her participate in small acts of resistance. Hiding a Jewish friend's books, passing messages, maintaining intellectual and ethical integrity in a time designed to crush such integrity. She and Sartre and their circle continue to meet, to talk, to plan for a different future. They begin to develop what will become the journal Le Temps Moderne, a platform for engaged intellectual work, for philosophy and dialogue with the pressing questions of the age. Rest in the knowledge that even in darkness, thinking continues, that even under oppression, the commitment to freedom and truth persists. Feel your muscles releasing all remaining tension as we recognize the courage not of grand gestures, but of daily persistence, of continuing to live by one's values when it would be easier to surrender, to collaborate, to simply survive. The war years deepen Simone's understanding of freedom. She comes to see more clearly how freedom is always situated, always exercised within circumstances we do not choose, always entangled with the freedom of others. We are not free in isolation, she realizes. We are free together or not at all. Our choices affect others. Their oppression diminishes our own freedom. This recognition will become central to her later work on ethics and feminism, the understanding that human freedom is interconnected, that liberation must be collective, that we are responsible not only for ourselves but for the world we create together. Breathe with this vision of solidarity, of freedom understood not as isolation but as connection, not as independence from others but as interdependence with others. The night surrounds you gently, completely, as we watch Paris slowly emerging from occupation, as we witness Simone in the aftermath of war, forever changed by what she has seen and experienced. The philosophy she writes now will carry the weight of this history, the urgency of these years when ideas had consequences measured in lives lost and saved, when the questions of existentialism were not academic exercises, but matters of survival and resistance and human dignity in the face of forces that would reduce persons to objects, subjects to instruments, freedom to submission. Rest now in the quiet after the storm, feeling safe, feeling held, feeling the profound peace that comes after crisis when survival itself becomes a form of victory, and the simple act of breathing freely in the Paris evening air is a kind of miracle. In the years after the war, Simone de Beauvoir steps more fully into her voice, into her power as a writer and thinker. She publishes novels that win prestigious literary prizes, The Blood of Others, All Men Are Mortal, works that explore freedom and responsibility through narratives of choice and consequence. Her philosophical essay, The Ethics of Ambiguity, appears in 1947, a profound meditation on how we create meaning and value in a world without transcendent truth, how we live morally when we accept that we are radically free. Let your breath flow naturally, easily, as we watch Simone's reputation growing, her voice reaching beyond the Parisian intellectual circles to a wider audience. She is no longer simply Sartre's companion, though some will always try to reduce her to that role, but a philosopher in her own right, a novelist of ideas, a public intellectual engaged with the pressing questions of her time. Feel yourself settling deeper into rest as we recognize how she inhabits this visibility, this influence, not with arrogance, but with the same commitment to authenticity and freedom that has always guided her. She writes essays on literature, on travel, on politics. She travels to America and writes of race and capitalism, documenting what she observes with the same keen eye she has always brought to experience. She travels to China, to Cuba, to Russia, seeking to understand different political systems, different attempts to create social justice, different visions of human flourishing. And always she writes, processing what she sees through the lens of existentialist philosophy, asking how systems and structures enable or constrain human freedom, how we might create a world in which more people have genuine opportunity to become themselves. Your body grows heavier, more relaxed as we watch Simone in her Paris apartment, surrounded by books and manuscripts, the views of Montparnasse visible through her windows. She works at her desk each morning, the discipline of decades now ingrained, as natural as breathing. She writes memoirs, beginning the multi-volume project that will document her life with extraordinary honesty and detail. Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter, The Prime of Life, Force of Circumstance. In these books, she does not present herself as heroic or perfect. She writes of her doubts, her mistakes, her moments of bad faith. She writes of jealousy and desire, of professional rivalry and personal pain. She writes of aging, of how the body changes and what this means for identity. Breathe with the courage of this honesty, this refusal to hide behind the comfortable fictions we so often construct about ourselves. Rest in the understanding that authenticity means accepting the full complexity of being human, our contradictions, our failings, our ongoing struggle to live well and choose freely. Simone's memoirs become a kind of existentialist project in themselves, an attempt to understand her own life as it was lived, to recognize the freedom and the constraints, the choices and the circumstances, the becoming that is never complete because life continues, unfolding moment by moment until the very end. Feel the peace in this acceptance of life as process, as project, as continuous creation rather than fixed achievement. The evening deepens around you, peaceful and complete, as we watch Simone in cafe conversations that stretch long into the night, in lecture halls, where she speaks to audiences hungry for her ideas, in the quiet of her study where the work continues, always continues, the thinking and writing that is itself a form of freedom, a way of being fully alive to the questions that make us human. Your eyelids grow impossibly heavy as we rest here in this vision of a life dedicated to thought and truth, to living authentically, and helping others understand what such living might mean. The philosopher works and you rest. And in this shared commitment to consciousness, hers to staying awake to the questions, yours to surrendering into peaceful sleep, there is a profound harmony, a gentle completion, a sense of rightness that requires no justification, no explanation, only acceptance and release. And as this act draws toward its close, as we prepare to journey deeper into Simone's thought in the acts to come, let yourself rest completely in the vision of a life fully chosen, fully lived, fully examined. Simone de Beauvoir in her middle years is a figure of remarkable presence, not because she has conformed to what others expected, but precisely because she has not, because she has insisted on creating her own path, defining her own values, living by her own carefully considered ethics. Feel your body releasing the last traces of tension. Feel yourself sinking into the deepest layers of comfort and calm as we recognize what her example offers. The possibility of living differently, of questioning the inherited scripts, of choosing freedom even when freedom is difficult and uncertain and requires constant vigilance. She has not sought conventional security, but she has created a life of meaning and purpose. She has not followed traditional paths, but she has forged a way that is authentically hers. And in doing so, she has demonstrated what her philosophy teaches, that we are not predetermined, not fixed by biology or tradition or circumstance, but rather that we are what we make ourselves through our choices, our actions, our ongoing project of becoming. Let this understanding wash over you like a gentle wave, soothing and peaceful, asking nothing of you now except that you rest, that you release, that you allow yourself to simply be in this moment without judgment or expectation. Breathe slowly, naturally, as we watch the lights of Paris coming on in the evening, as we see Simone closing her notebook after a long day's work, as we witness her walking the familiar streets toward a cafe where friends await, toward conversation and connection and the shared life of the mind that has always sustained her. Feel the peace in this image of work completed, of a day fully lived, of the simple rhythm of waking and working and connecting and resting that shapes every human life, philosopher or not. Your breath grows slower, softer, barely a whisper of movement in your chest, as we let the details of Simone's story fade into a gentler awareness, a quieter knowing. The specific dates and titles and historical events become less important than the essential truth they reveal, that a human being can choose freedom, can live authentically, can think deeply and live fully and create meaning in a world that does not hand us meaning ready-made. Rest now in this truth. Rest in the awareness that you too are a project of becoming, that you too face choices each day, that you too are creating yourself through how you live and what you value and how you treat others. But do not hold these thoughts with effort or strain. Let them simply be present, gentle as starlight, as you drift deeper into rest, deeper into peace, deeper into the soft darkness that holds you safely, completely, tenderly. The philosopher rests and you rest, and all across the city lights are dimming, curtains are closing, day is surrendering to night, and in this surrender there is no loss, only the natural rhythm of things, the necessary alternation of activity and rest, thinking and dreaming, consciousness and sleep. Feel yourself held by this rhythm, carried by it, released into it completely and without resistance. The story continues tomorrow, the becoming continues tomorrow, but for now there is only this moment, this breath, this peaceful letting go into the gentle embrace of sleep, of rest, of the deep and dreamless peace where nothing is required of you, where you are simply and completely enough, exactly as you are, breathing softly in the quiet night. And so we arrive, gently, softly, at the work that would change the world's understanding of what it means to be a woman, to be human, to become oneself. The Second Sex, that monumental book Simone de Beauvoir began writing in 1946, in the aftermath of war, in a Paris rebuilding itself stone by stone, idea by idea. Imagine her at her table in a cafe or in the quiet of her study, surrounded by books and notes, history texts and philosophical treatises, anthropology and biology, literature and myth. All of it swirling through her brilliant mind as she asked the question that would unlock everything. What is a woman? It seems such a simple question, doesn't it, as you lie here in the peaceful darkness, your breathing slow and steady. But Beauvoir discovered that beneath this simple question lay centuries of answers, assumptions, stories that had been told so many times they seemed like natural law, like truth itself. And she began to write, slowly, carefully, examining everything with the philosopher's patient eye, turning over each assumption like smooth stones in a stream, watching how the light played across their surfaces. She wrote about biology, yes, about the facts of female bodies, but she saw that these facts had been interpreted, given meaning, woven into narratives that always, somehow, positioned women as lesser, as other, as the second sex. She wrote about history, tracing the long story of how societies had organized themselves, how in civilization after civilization, women had been confined to the domestic sphere, to the realm of immanence rather than transcendence, to repetition rather than creation. And as you listen, you can feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort, into rest, knowing that these ideas, these revolutionary thoughts emerged slowly, patiently, through years of careful work. Beauvoir wrote about mythology, about how stories shape us, how women had been cast as virgin or temptress, as mother or seductress, as nature to be tamed or mystery to be feared, but never, or so rarely, as full human beings with their own projects, their own freedom. She read everything, absorbed everything, and synthesized it all with a clarity that was breathtaking. And then in one of the most famous sentences ever written, she declared, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman." Let those words settle over you now like a soft blanket, like the gentlest understanding. One is not born, but rather becomes. What she meant, what she saw with such piercing insight, was that femininity is not a natural fact, but a social construction, that the qualities we associate with being a woman, passivity, emotionality, dependence, are not innate but learned, absorbed from the world around us, from the moment of birth when a baby is wrapped in pink or blue. We become women, she argued, through a long process of conditioning, through subtle and not so subtle pressures to conform, to accept limitation, to define ourselves through our relationships to men rather than through our own sovereign existence. And in seeing this, in understanding that gender is something we are made into rather than something we simply are, Beauvoir opened the door to liberation. Because what is constructed can be deconstructed, what is learned can be unlearned, what has been made can be remade. Feel yourself relaxing even more deeply now, your muscles soft, your mind quiet, as we contemplate this gentle revolution of thought. Beauvoir wrote with such care, such nuance, acknowledging the complexity of women's lives, the ways that many women found meaning and satisfaction in traditional roles, while also showing how these roles' limited human possibility confined the scope of female existence. Her project was not to judge individual women, but to understand the system that shaped them, the invisible cage of expectation and custom that made true freedom so difficult to achieve. The book appeared in 1949, 2 thick volumes that landed in French intellectual life like a revelation, like a Hun, causing scandal and excitement in equal measure. Some praised it as a work of genius, while others attacked it viciously, uncomfortable with its frank discussion of female sexuality, of menstruation and pregnancy and menopause, of all the aspects of women's embodied existence that had been hidden away, considered too indelicate for serious philosophical discussion. But Beauvoir refused to look away from any of it. She examined women's biological reality with the same calm, unflinching attention she brought to everything, neither celebrating nor condemning it, simply showing how the female body had been used to justify limitation, to argue that anatomy is destiny. And as you breathe slowly in and out, you can appreciate the courage this took, the willingness to speak uncomfortable truths, to challenge every orthodoxy. She wrote about how girls are raised differently from boys, how they are encouraged to be pretty rather than brave, to please rather than to demand, to make themselves small and accommodating, how they learn to see themselves through others' eyes, to judge their own worth by their attractiveness to men, to seek validation externally rather than trusting their own inner authority. She described how women are taught to live in what she called immanence, the realm of repetition, of maintaining life rather than creating new forms, of supporting others' projects rather than pursuing their own. While men are encouraged toward transcendence, the realm of creation, of projects that extend into the future, of making their mark on the world. And she argued with passionate clarity that women too are capable of transcendence, that they too are free subjects who can shape their own existence, if only the barriers were removed, if only the social structures could change. Let yourself sink even deeper now into the soft support beneath you, feeling held, feeling safe, as we explore these ideas that open so many possibilities. Beauvoir dedicated hundreds of pages to examining how women had been represented in literature and myth, how male writers had projected their own fears and fantasies onto female characters, creating not real women but symbols, the eternal feminine, the mysterious other. She showed how men, positioned as the default human, had defined themselves as subject, while defining women as object, as the other against which masculine identity was constructed. Man was mind, woman was body. Man was culture, woman was nature. Man was active, woman was passive. Man was transcendence, woman was immanence. Always these binary oppositions, and always with woman on the devalued side. But Beauvoir insisted that these divisions were not natural or necessary, that they served to maintain male privilege, to reserve full humanity for men alone. And in exposing this structure, in making visible what had been invisible, she gave women tools to understand their own oppression, their own diminishment. The book was enormous in scope, encyclopedic in its learning, drawing on philosophy and literature, on anthropology and psychoanalysis, on history and biology, weaving all these threads together into a comprehensive analysis of women's condition. Reading it, women around the world felt seen for the first time, felt their lived experience validated and explained. They recognized themselves in her descriptions of feminine conditioning, of the subtle ways they had learned to limit themselves, to defer their own dreams, to accept secondary status. And they also found in her pages a vision of liberation, a path forward toward authenticity and freedom. Beauvoir was clear that this freedom would not be easy, that it required economic independence, access to education and meaningful work, control over reproduction, and profound social change. She did not offer simple solutions or false comfort, but she offered something more valuable: clarity, understanding, and hope. As you rest here in peaceful darkness, you can feel grateful for thinkers like Beauvoir, for those who dedicate their lives to illuminating truth, to expanding human possibility. Your breathing is so slow now, so even, so peaceful. Perhaps the most powerful sections of The Second Sex are those where Beauvoir examined women's lived experience with such precision and empathy, such deep understanding. She wrote about the young girl who learns to restrict her movements, to keep her legs together, to take up less space, to quiet her voice. About the adolescent discovering that her changing body is viewed as both desirable and dangerous, that she must now navigate a world of male attention and judgment. She wrote about the woman in love, how easily women are encouraged to lose themselves in devotion, to make another person their entire world, abandoning their own projects and dreams in favor of supporting his. She understood the appeal of this surrender, the way that traditional femininity offered women a kind of security, a defined role, relief from the burden of freedom. But she also showed the cost, the way that such self-abnegation diminishes the self, prevents authentic existence. And as you lie here so relaxed, so peaceful, these ideas wash over you like gentle water, like the softest rain. Beauvoir wrote with particular insight about marriage and motherhood, those institutions that had been presented as woman's natural destiny, her only path to fulfillment. She did not condemn these choices, but she insisted they must be choices, freely made, not obligations. Not the only routes to female value and meaning. She described the repetitive labor of housework, how it offers no lasting achievement, how the meal is cooked and consumed, the floor cleaned only to be dirtied again, the same tasks repeating endlessly without transcendence, without creation of anything new. She wrote about pregnancy and childbirth, about the profound ambivalence many women feel toward these experiences, an ambivalence that society refuses to acknowledge, insisting instead that motherhood is pure joy, pure fulfillment. Beauvoir gave voice to the unspoken, to the complex reality of women's lives that had been covered over with sentimentality and myth. And in doing so, she freed countless women to acknowledge their own feelings, to recognize that they were not abnormal or unnatural if they wanted more than traditional roles offered, if they felt constrained by expectation, if they yearned for wider horizons. Throughout the book, Beauvoir returned again and again to the concept of authenticity, of becoming a free subject rather than accepting the status of object. She acknowledged that this path is difficult for everyone, that existential freedom is a burden as well as a gift, but she insisted that women deserve the opportunity to undertake this project of self-creation just as much as men do, that women too can live authentic lives, making genuine choices, taking responsibility for their existence, creating meaning through their projects and commitments. The Second Sex was not a simple polemic or political manifesto, though it certainly had political implications. It was a work of philosophy, rigorous and nuanced, grounded in the existentialist framework Beauvoir had developed alongside Sartre, but also distinctly her own, shaped by her attention to the concrete, material conditions of existence, to the body, to situation, to all the ways that abstract freedom is constrained by real circumstances. She understood that telling women they are free means nothing if they lack education, economic independence, control over their own fertility. Freedom requires not just philosophical recognition, but practical, social change. And as you breathe slowly, deeply, you can sense the importance of this work, the way it transformed understanding, opened conversations, launched movements. The book was translated into English in 1953, though the translation was flawed, and it began to circulate through feminist networks, passed from hand to hand, discussed in consciousness-raising groups, cited in academic papers and manifestos. It became a founding text of second-wave feminism, though Beauvoir herself would not fully embrace the feminist movement until later. Women discovered in her pages a vocabulary for their own experience, concepts that helped them understand what they had felt but could not name. And the work continues to resonate today, generations later, because the questions Beauvoir asked remain urgent, remain unresolved. What does it mean to be a woman, to become oneself, to live authentically in a world that still in so many ways encourages women toward imminence, toward self-diminishment? Let these questions settle in your mind, not demanding answers, but simply present like stars in the dark sky, constant and peaceful. In the years after The Second Sex appeared, Beauvoir watched as her ideas spread and evolved, as they were taken up by activists and scholars, debated and refined, challenged and expanded. She had given the women's movement a philosophical foundation, a rigorous intellectual framework for understanding oppression and imagining liberation. And though some criticized her for not going far enough, for remaining too tied to male-defined philosophy, for focusing too much on privileged women's experience, her contribution was nonetheless revolutionary, transformative. As you rest here in such deep peace, your body heavy and relaxed, your mind quiet and calm, you can appreciate how ideas ripple outward through time, how one person's thought becomes part of a collective awakening. Beauvoir continued to write and think about women's lives throughout her career. She published memoirs that frankly discussed her own experience, her choices, her relationships, her struggles. She wrote a book about aging, another taboo subject, examining how society discards older women, how they become invisible, denied even the limited value that youth and beauty had granted them. She never stopped questioning, never stopped examining, never stopped insisting that human beings deserve freedom, deserve the chance to create their own meaning, to become themselves. And her own life remained a testimony to these principles. She never married, maintaining her relationship with Sartre on her own terms, unconventional and open. She supported herself through her writing, maintaining economic independence. She traveled extensively to America and China, to Russia and Brazil, always observing, always thinking, always writing. She engaged with the political movements of her time, supporting decolonization, opposing the war in Algeria, eventually embracing the feminist movement fully in the 1970s. She lived as much as anyone can according to her principles, creating her own path, refusing limitation. And in doing so, she offered a model as powerful as her ideas, showing that a woman could be a serious intellectual, could live unconventionally, could claim authority and freedom. Let yourself sink even deeper now, feeling so comfortable, so peaceful, knowing that the story continues, that ideas and lives interweave, creating possibilities. The language of the second sex has become part of our common vocabulary. We speak now of gender as socially constructed, of the ways that culture shapes identity, of the importance of women's economic independence and bodily autonomy. These ideas that seemed so radical in 1949 have become foundational, though the work of liberation remains incomplete, the project ongoing. Beauvoir showed us that becoming a woman is a process, not a given, and by extension that becoming a person, becoming oneself, is always a process, always unfolding, never final or complete. We are all, always, in the process of becoming. And there is something deeply restful about this understanding, isn't there? In this moment, you do not need to be finished, complete, perfect. You are simply here, breathing, being, becoming. The pressure to be a certain way, to fulfill certain roles, to meet certain expectations, all of that can fade away now, can dissolve into the peaceful darkness. You are enough, exactly as you are, and you are also becoming, always becoming, and that is enough too. Beauvoir gave us permission to question everything, to examine all the stories we have been told about who we should be, what we should want, how we should live, and in questioning and examining we find freedom. Not a freedom from all constraint, not an escape from situation or body or history, but a freedom within these constraints, a freedom to choose, to create meaning, to become authentic. As you breathe slowly, deeply, you can feel this freedom as a possibility, always available, always present. The freedom to be yourself, whoever that is, whoever you are becoming. And for now, in this peaceful moment, you can simply rest in being, in breathing, in the quiet comfort of darkness and stillness. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to prove, nothing you need to become in this moment. You can simply be. Simply rest, simply breathe, And in this rest, in this peace, there is a kind of freedom too, the freedom to let go, to release effort, to trust in the gentle unfolding of time. Beauvoir's words echo softly through the years. One is not born, but rather becomes, and in becoming, there is always possibility, always hope, always the chance to choose again, to begin again. But for now, there is only this breath, this moment, this peaceful letting go into sleep, into rest, into the deep and dreamless peace where becoming and being merge into one. And so we arrive at the heart of it, the gentle, essential truth that Beauvoir spent her life exploring and explaining. That we are all free, radically free, and that this freedom is both our greatest possibility and our heaviest responsibility. That we are not defined by biology or history or circumstance, but that we define ourselves through our choices, our projects, our commitments. That we are always becoming, never finished, never complete. And as you rest here in such profound peace, your body so relaxed, your breathing so slow and even, you can let these ideas settle into you, not as concepts to be understood, but as gentle reassurance, as peaceful wisdom. You do not need to figure everything out. You do not need to become anything other than what you already are. In this moment, you can simply be, simply breathe, simply rest. Beauvoir understood that life is ambiguous, that situations are complex, that there are rarely simple answers or clear paths forward. She did not offer false certainty or easy solutions, but she offered something more valuable, more true, the recognition that we are capable of freedom, that we can question and choose and become, that our lives are our own to shape, even within constraints, even in difficult circumstances. And there is such peace in this understanding, such relief in knowing that we need not accept every story we are told, every expectation placed upon us. We can question, we can choose, we can become. But for now, in this moment, you can let all questioning fade away, all choosing, all becoming. You can simply rest in being, in breathing, in the quiet darkness that holds you so gently. The second sex opened a door, changed a conversation, transformed countless lives. It gave women language for their experience, concepts for understanding, vision for what might be possible. It remains one of the most important works of 20th century philosophy, a book that continues to challenge and inspire, to provoke thought and encourage freedom. And Beauvoir herself remains an inspiration, a model of intellectual courage and personal authenticity, a woman who lived according to her own principles, who carved out a life of freedom and meaning, who contributed enormously to human understanding. As you drift deeper into sleep, you can feel grateful for such lives, such minds, such contributions. The world is richer for Beauvoir's work, more thoughtful, more free, and you can rest now, knowing that the questions she asked continue to be explored, that the project of liberation continues, that the work of becoming goes on, but not now, not in this peaceful moment. Now there is only rest, only breath, only the gentle embrace of sleep. Your body is so heavy, so relaxed, sinking deeper into comfort with each slow breath. Your mind is quiet, peaceful, drifting like a leaf on calm water. All effort can cease now, all striving, all thinking. There is only this moment, this breath, this peaceful darkness. One is not born, but rather becomes, and in this moment, you are becoming rest, becoming peace, becoming sleep. The words fade away, the ideas dissolve into gentle feeling, into calm, into the deep and dreamless peace that asks nothing of you, requires nothing from you. You are simply here, simply breathing, simply being, and that is enough. That is everything, that is all. The gentle darkness holds you softly, supports you completely. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do. Only this breath, this moment, this letting go into sleep, into peace, into the deep and restful night where all becoming pauses, where all questions cease, where there is only the gentle rhythm of breathing, the soft pulse of existence, the peaceful surrender to rest. Freedom and responsibility can wait until tomorrow. Transcendence and authenticity can wait. All the projects and choices and becoming can wait. For now, there is only this breath, this peace, this gentle, complete, perfect rest. Sleep now, drift now, let go now into the deep and peaceful night, into the calm and restful darkness, into sleep, into peace, into the gentle, dreamless, perfect rest that asks nothing and gives everything. Sleep now, sleep, sleep. And so we drift forward now, gently forward through time into the autumn years of Simone's remarkable life. The decades pass like soft pages turning, the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, and Simone continues writing, continues thinking, continues living her philosophy with quiet determination. Her hair has turned silver now, elegant and striking, and her eyes still hold that penetrating intelligence, that commitment to truth, that refusal to accept easy answers. In these later years, she writes memoir after memoir, A Very Easy Death, exploring her mother's final days with unflinching honesty and tenderness, all said and done, reflecting on aging, memory, and the passage of time. Old Age, a massive study examining how society treats its elderly, how we are diminished or honored as the years accumulate. She remains productive, purposeful, engaged with the world even as the world changes around her. Even as new generations rise, even as the movements she helped inspire take on lives of their own, she continues to contribute, to speak, to write, to think. Her apartment on Rue Schulcher remains a gathering place for intellectuals, activists, and friends. The same books lining the walls, the same simple furniture, the same commitment to a life of the mind, a life of freedom. And isn't there something deeply comforting in this, in the image of a life lived with such consistency, such authenticity, such dedication to principles? She does not retire from herself, does not abandon her commitments, but continues day after day to be Simone de Beauvoir, to become herself more fully, to live the freedom she always championed. Let this image settle over you now, the aging philosopher at her desk. Morning light streaming through Parisian windows, the quiet scratch of pen on paper, the peaceful dedication to work that matters. Feel how this steadiness invites your own settling, your own quieting, your own gentle release into rest. The years passing, the work continuing, the commitment unwavering, like a heartbeat, like breathing, like the natural rhythm of a life lived with purpose. And you can rest in this. Rest in the knowledge that some lives are lived fully, authentically, freely. Rest now. Breathe now. Let the image of Simone's later years wrap around you like a warm blanket, like twilight, like peace. And beyond her own continued work, beyond her own writing and activism, there ripples outward something larger, something that continues to grow and spread even as we speak. The influence, the impact, the way her ideas have touched millions of lives, transformed movements, changed how we think about gender, freedom, and what it means to be human. The Second Sex, published in 1949, becomes one of the most important books of the 20th century. Translated into dozens of languages, read by generations of women seeking to understand their own experiences, seeking to name what had been unnamed, to question what had been taken for granted. Her famous assertion, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman," enters the collective consciousness, becomes a rallying cry, a revelation, a key that unlocks doors previously invisible. Women around the world read her words and recognize themselves, recognize their own struggles, their own diminishment, their own potential for liberation. The women's liberation movements of the 1960s and 70s claim her as inspiration and guide. Second-wave feminism builds upon her foundation. Third-wave feminism engages with her ideas, critiques them, expands them, and still her influence continues into contemporary feminism, into gender studies, into philosophy departments and activist circles and consciousness-raising groups and living rooms where people gather to discuss what freedom means, what equality requires, what it takes to become fully human. Let these ripples wash over you now. Gentle waves spreading outward, touching shores distant in time and space. Feel how one life, one voice, one commitment to truth and freedom can echo across decades, across continents, can change the landscape of human thought. And there's something so peaceful in this, in knowing that ideas have this power, that thought and word can reshape reality, that philosophy is not abstract but living, breathing, transforming. You can rest in this vastness, this spreading influence, like lying beneath a night sky and feeling connected to something larger than yourself. The ripples continuing, the ideas spreading, the transformation ongoing. And you breathing quietly, resting deeply, held in this vast web of human thought and connection. Let go a little more. drift a little deeper into the peaceful knowledge that some gifts keep giving, some lights keep shining, some voices keep speaking, even as we drift, even as we rest, even as we sleep. Let us return now to her central themes, those ideas we've encountered throughout this journey, and let them wash over us once more, gently, soothingly, like waves on a calm shore. Freedom. Beauvoir's lifelong obsession, her deepest commitment. Freedom not as something given, but as something we must create, claim, live into every day. The freedom to choose who we become, to define ourselves rather than accept definitions imposed from outside, to live authentically rather than in bad faith. Feel this idea now, not as something to analyze, but as something to rest in. The profound gift of human freedom, your freedom, to become, to choose, to create yourself anew. And with freedom comes responsibility. Beauvoir never shied from this, never pretended freedom was easy or comfortable. To be free is to be responsible for what you make of yourself, for how you live, for the choices you make that ripple out and affect others. But there's something peaceful in this too, in accepting responsibility rather than blaming fate or circumstance or the impositions of others, in knowing that you are, in some fundamental sense, the author of your own life. Breathe with this now. Freedom and responsibility, two sides of one truth. And then there is ambiguity. Beauvoir's recognition that human existence is fundamentally ambiguous. Neither pure subject nor pure object, neither completely free nor completely determined, neither angel nor beast, but something in between. We live in ambiguity. We are ambiguity. And rather than seeking false certainties or rigid answers, perhaps we can rest in this, accept the uncertainty, the in-betweenness, the glorious mess of being human. Let this soften you, the permission to not have all the answers, to live with questions, to accept complexity. And finally, the idea of becoming, that beautiful, endless process. We are not fixed, not finished, but always in the process of becoming. One is not born, but rather becomes. Not just a woman, but a human being, an individual, oneself. Becoming, always becoming, never quite arrived, but always in motion. And perhaps this is the most soothing thought of all, that you are not required to be complete, to be perfect, to be finished. You are allowed to be in process, to be becoming, always becoming. Let these themes blend together now. Freedom, responsibility, ambiguity, becoming. Like colors mixing, like voices harmonizing, like water flowing, washing over you, through you, carrying you deeper into rest, deeper into peace, deeper into the gentle, accepting, compassionate space where philosophy meets sleep, where thought dissolves into feeling, where understanding becomes peace. On April 14th, 1986, Simone de Beauvoir died peacefully in Paris at the age of 78, surrounded by friends. Her life's work complete, her voice having spoken all it needed to speak. She was buried in Montparnasse Cemetery beside Jean-Paul Sartre, the two philosophers who had shared so much of their lives, their work, their commitment to freedom, together now in eternal rest. And at her funeral, thousands came, women and men whose lives she had touched, whose consciousness she had raised, whose freedom she had championed. They walked slowly through the Paris streets. They gathered at the cemetery. They stood in silence, honoring a life extraordinarily lived. But death, as Beauvoir herself wrote, is not the opposite of life. It is the completion of life, the final act that gives shape and meaning to all that came before. And her death does not end her presence. Her books remain, her ideas continue, her voice still speaks to anyone who opens her pages, who engages with her questions, who takes up her challenge to live freely and authentically. She rests now, truly rests, her work finished, her gift given. And perhaps we can join her in this rest, not in death, but in the peaceful knowledge that enough is enough, that what we have done today is sufficient, that we can release our striving and simply be, simply breathe. Simply rest. Imagine the quiet of that cemetery, Montparnasse, where so many artists and thinkers are buried. The stone monuments, the ancient trees, the paths worn smooth by generations of visitors, the sounds of Paris distant and muffled, the city continuing its life, while here, in this peaceful place, there is only stillness, only silence, only rest. Let yourself sink into this image, the cemetery at twilight, the soft light fading. The day releasing into night, Simone resting, Sartre resting, all the philosophers and artists and thinkers resting, their work complete, their voices silent now, their gifts given to the world. And you too can rest, here, now, your own day complete, your own efforts sufficient, your own being enough just as it is. Rest beside the philosophers, rest beneath the Parisian sky, rest in the knowledge that you have lived this day, and that is enough. That you are becoming, always becoming, and that is enough. Rest now, deeply, completely, perfectly. Let go, let everything go into rest, into peace, into the gentle, welcoming darkness where all effort ceases, where all striving ends, where there is only breath, only being, only this rest, this peace, this perfect, gentle, complete rest. And so we come to the end of this journey, this exploration of one remarkable life, one powerful mind, one voice calling always for freedom. But endings, as Beauvoir taught us, are also continuations. What ends in one place begins in another. What rests here awakens there. The philosopher sleeps, but her philosophy lives. The woman is silent, but her words still speak. And you have listened. You have traveled with us through Simone's life, through her childhood in Belle Epoque, Paris, through her education and intellectual awakening, through her unconventional choices and wartime experiences, through her masterwork and its revolutionary claims, through her later years and lasting influence. You have encountered her central ideas: freedom, ambiguity, responsibility, becoming. And perhaps something has shifted in you, some small seed planted, some door opened, some possibility recognized. Or perhaps you've simply rested, simply breathed, simply allowed yourself to be held by the gentle rhythm of story and thought. Either way, it is enough, it is complete, it is perfect as it is. As you drift now into deeper sleep, into the dreamless peace that awaits, let Simone's final gift settle over you, the permission to become, the invitation to freedom, the acceptance of ambiguity, the embrace of responsibility. Let these ideas be not burdens but blessings, not demands but possibilities, not rules but invitations. You are free. You are becoming. You are enough. Sleep with this knowledge, rest with this peace, drift with this acceptance. The philosopher has given her gift. You have received it. Now there is nothing to do but rest, nothing to achieve but sleep, nothing to become but deeply, peacefully, completely relaxed. Breathing. Just breathing. The rhythm of existence, the pulse of being, the simple, perfect fact of life. Breathe, rest, sleep. Let everything dissolve now. The story, the philosopher, the ideas, the words. Let it all fade into the gentle darkness, the peaceful void, the restful emptiness where nothing is asked and everything is given. Sleep, 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 deep and dreamless, peaceful and complete. Freedom in release, becoming in rest, responsibility released. Ambiguity embraced, just this breath, this moment, this perfect, endless, peaceful now. Sleep, drift, rest into peace, into darkness, into the gentle, infinite, welcoming space where all stories end and all rest begins. Sleep now, completely, deeply, perfectly. Sleep, sleep, sleep. Thank you for listening tonight. If this story helped you drift off, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more calming stories. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you next time.